Hello and welcome to the Third Space Podcast. This is Bennett with another podcast introduction. But fear not, there's no audio issue this time. I'm not warning you of any problem. There's no reason to be dismayed. Everything's fine. But Daniel and I, when we listened to the last episode, we kind of liked having an introduction. Kind of felt like it was setting the stage a little bit. So I think we're going to start trying to do an introduction before the episodes, just a brief one. It'll usually be me, but maybe Daniel will jump in with an introduction every now and then. Anyway, this is the 23rd episode of the Third Space Podcast. In this episode, we spend a while talking about the education system, which is no surprise considering Daniel's a teacher. We have lots of complaints, but lots of suggestions about interesting things that might make things better. Then we have a brand new segment that I won't spoil here, but I think it went really well. I enjoyed it. I had fun. I think it'll be coming back again. And then we dove into the topic of identity, specifically intrinsic identity, how you represent yourself. And rather than go the normal route of talking about it, we kind of did a psychoanalysis of Daniel to get to the bottom of how he structures his identity. I thought it was pretty interesting. It's kind of personal, but I don't know, maybe people can find it interesting and learn from it. And that's the content of this episode. I thought it was a good one, kind of long, but pretty good. Hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, I'll let Daniel do his thing.
Bennett.
Hello, Daniel.
Bennett, it's a show.
Greetings.
Greetings.
Oh, it's a jingle.
It's a jingle of a show called Third Space. Yeah, you talked over it. We can edit that in post. It'll be fine.
Nah, we'll leave it. I didn't realize I was getting a really jingled up jingle that was, didn't fit the pattern I was used to. So this was more of a modern jingle style.
I was going for a monotone speaking, more of a talking jingle that didn't really have much of a jingle. But it was still a jingle. That's what I was going for.
Yeah, that's very
just
modern.
Just a really bad jingle, in other words. Really bad. Very modern.
Very modern.
Minimalist is what I know.
Yeah. It's so modern that it doesn't even have to have music. That's how modern this jingle is.
In fact, today's podcast is one long jingle, and it will repeat before the intro of the bigger podcast.
Just after the podcast ends, just press repeat and listen to it again, and that's the second chorus.
So, I've got something on my mind.
Okay.
Shoot. So I'd like to yeah. I'm going to share it. I'm going to share that thing. Why do we do that? I have this tendency to qualify. I'm about to share an idea. Kids will do this in papers sometimes though, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the worst papers, the worst writers. This is not common. But
like
they
who?
Will write,
Call them out. Call them out. What's their name?
Right. Just not going to do it.
All right.
But they will write something like, in this paper, I'm going to tell you about. And, I mean, that's rare. But still, wow, just tell me about it. You might as well write, this is a topic sentence, and it will say this. My claim is going to be, it just creates for a very strange paper.
I think
if you're writing in the paper that this is the paper.
Two things that spring to mind, reasons why that might be. The first is that a lot of times when you read professional research, like journals or articles or whatever, a lot of times they tell you what they're about to present to you. This experiment is about X, Y, and Z, and in this paper we present blah, 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 blah. And that sounds very sterile and scientific and cold, and maybe that's not the best style even for scientific papers, but it is that way and has been that way for a long time. And students are exposed to that.
I'm blanking on the name though. It's called something. The excerpt, the explication, the something. I'm blanking on the name. But you write one of those, that says this is the research we did.
Yeah, and kids are exposed to that, and they think, oh, that's what it means to be, an academic or whatever. And so here I am writing a paper in English class, and I better do that. That's one reason I can think. And another reason I can think is just that the easiest way to write is in narrative form, and the easiest narrative to write is the narrative that you have lived or are living. And so
Right, the first
when
person, like, I am going to tell you, I'm doing this. Yeah.
yeah, here I am. What am I doing? I don't really know what I'm about to talk about, but here I am writing a paper. So in this paper, I will explain. You're thinking as you write, and
Right.
that's the kind of writing that needs revision to get rid of that stuff. But it's really easy to do. It's really easy to write that way. I write that way a lot of times. Like even like for my school papers and stuff, like where I'm not an English class, so the narrative doesn't matter that much. I write that way because it's easy and it gets to the point.
By the end of this paper, I will have demonstrated this, this, and this. I'll have convinced you of this, that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, not quite that formal, but I'll say, like for example, I was working on the start of a report just earlier today, and I said, for my analysis, I chose this and I chose this, and the experiment that I ran was like this. I mean, it was first person, and it was a narrative. I was walking through what I chose, why I chose it, and then later I'll put some results in there.
I mean, heck, you could see an English teacher giving a lesson about how to write an introduction, and you're like, well, it's what it sounds like. It's to introduce a topic. You explore it. You can look at multiple sides. You basically are telling the reader what you're going to talk about. And when you say that, then they translate it to writing. It's like, all right, in this essay, I'm going to talk about or write about, and they're just exploring the topic.
Strictly speaking, that's a fine introduction. They are introducing what they're about to talk about. It's the most unsubtle way to do it. It's just right on the nose. Now, if I was doing something creative and not, a computer science report or something, then there's no way I would talk like that. I would have to think of something wacky to start off with, because that's more fun and engaging, and it breaks the rules that are kind of established, and it surprises a little bit. But
right.
But it's easy to understand why someone would, go that easy route if they're an inexperienced writer, or if the purpose of the paper isn't to entertain as much as it is to inform or something like that.
I guess I'm not stressing how bad it is. Like, they will say, my thesis is that, and they will say, and then they will say, they'll write in the book every other sentence. In the book, the character does this. In the book, and it's like, yeah, I
obviously it's in the book.
Obviously it's in the book. The character didn't leap off the page. Like, But these are all little pet peeves, and I haven't even gotten to my bigger question about education.
Oh, okay.
So I've been teaching my AP Lang courses, and we've been talking. We actually read the first chapter to Excellent Sheep. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but it makes. No,
I'm familiar with sheep, but not.
Okay, well, these are not only good sheep, great, nay. No, wait, that doesn't work.
That's not a sheep.
Excellent, excellent sheep.
Great joke.
Know how to baa, nay. Now I wish it worked. Dang it. It was close to being funny.
It's that. Hold on, that deserves a special category of joke, because if you would have said that their discussion is bad, that would have been called what we now know as a dad joke.
Right.
But what you just made was like some kind of anti-dad joke. It was. It had all of the tone and intent of a dad joke, but it was wrong. It was totally wrong. Nay. They all said nay or whatever,
well,
meaning it to be like a sheep.
Yeah, good, nay, great, nay, excellent sheep. And then I caught on, I was saying, gonna do this nay pattern, and I thought, well, animals make a nay sound. Maybe I could fit this with sheep. But it was, you know how fast you have to think to make a joke like that? And how wrong you have to be?
Yes.
You have to think quick and not deep. That's how you have to be.
That's right.
So anyway, we've been talking about the value of education. Excellent sheep is this sort of phenomenon that you get trained to be amazing students, these super people, if you will, and they jump all the hoops, but they don't actually, they become obsessed with success and the rat race to get to college, and then they get to college, which becomes a rat race to get whatever degree and the most credentials. Credentialism is what they label it as, and ultimately, it just they get into a job that they possibly hate. This is all treaded ground, probably not groundbreaking to you. And we had a good discussion, a rich discussion about, hey, you guys are juniors and seniors. Think about this. Think about who you are in this system, because every educational system wants to create some sort of human being, and what are they trying to create in you. And then we had this discussion about you really have to look to society, because education's trying to answer something about society. But then I just wanted to propose a very simple solution to you. Look, we go to school, we go to college for lots of reasons, but the primary one is to prepare you for a great job, right? To get you that really good paying or high skilled or whatever job. But then it dawned on me, like, why do we have college? Like, that means college is a middleman. Like, who knows better how to do the jobs than the businesses themselves? Why aren't they? And I believe this is sort of hearsay. I haven't looked into it, but I think Google is doing some sort of 6-month program where they will like train you, and maybe even have to pay Google. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it, so I'm talking out of my butt right now. But if they offer a 6-month sort of certificate to come work for them and do some coding or whatever it is, like, wait, why isn't this scalable for everywhere? Why are we bothering with college? If you say I want to be a lawyer, like, go figure out how to be lawyers from lawyers. And I know this sounds like some sort of just massive apprenticeship thing, but well, I guess I want to explore the problems and the benefits of that. Like, why college at all? Now, college exists in a different form for like a higher form of consciousness and to explore the human experience and sit around and read and play hacky sack and throw the frisbee and stuff. And I love all of that. I joke, but I'm not undermining that. Like, there's a space to sort of examine what it means to be human, but that should be like also be done without. That should be explored outside of education anyway. Like, what is it? Why are you here? It's not a thing that like your job has to answer. It doesn't have to. So what are the intricacies of like why couldn't Google do that? You know, Walmart do that, whatever restaurants do that. Like what jobs are so impossible that you need? Like, hospitals could be doing this for doctors instead of, like, the hospitals know what they need their doctors to do. So,
right.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, you're presenting something that I'm really open to. I'm very open to almost any idea that will change the educational system, which, in my view, sucks. And I recognize I'm saying that to a teacher. But, like, I think a large-scale apprenticeship system, like you kind of mentioned, would be a really interesting experiment to have. I mean, in my opinion, most of modern college majors are worthless in terms of being practically worthwhile for getting a job or earning an income. You know, there are pursuits of passion. You know, if you love art or you love poetry, then that's one thing. But getting, you know, a bachelor's degree in English or art or something, how much good is that really going to do you? And but you know, to your point, if you were going to be a professional artist, if that was your goal, to be a professional artist, it doesn't seem like you would take classes in art so much as in business or in, you know, marketing or some other courses that would allow you to actually pursue your passion as a career rather than learning how to do it. You know, do you kind of see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
But even in other fields, you know, you mentioned Google. You know, software engineering is an excellent example. I don't think you need a degree to be. In fact, I can say confidently, you don't need a degree to be a good software engineer. I didn't get a degree in software engineering, and I'm a software engineer. So, I mean, yes, now I'm pursuing a master's in software engineering, but only so that I can fill that gap on my resume that probably doesn't matter, and I can say, oh yeah, by the way, you know, I have these words that say I can do what I've been doing. So it's kind of pointless, but I think it's an excellent idea to instead, especially considering the cost of college now and the amount of debt people have, I think it's an excellent idea for career areas, companies, whatever, to do more on-the-job training programs rather than looking for degrees. I think that would be beneficial for everyone, the companies, the potential employees, students, everyone.
Well, I mean, there's this tension that exists between colleges and businesses, right? The businesses are always saying the college kids are coming in ill-prepared to handle the workforce and all of this. So why are they passing the buck to the colleges? Why aren't they just saying, we'll train them ourselves because we know
Because it
precisely
costs
what
money.
they need to do?
Because it's expensive.
Then say you can come to work for us that would normally be you can come get a 6-month certificate. You pay us for this, instead of going to college, come pay us for this certificate. And then, in a shortened amount of time, because they know, especially if someone's looking for this entry level position and maybe they work it for a couple of years. So from 18 to, 19, 20, 21, they're working and they're making, I'm just going to throw some numbers out there, $40,000, $50,000. And then they decide they don't like it or they want to go up that chain, then they get the degree within there. And the company has said, hey, you're good at this. You should get our extra degree in this. You should get our advanced thing so you can become a manager or whatever chain of command they want you to go up or hierarchy. But why this degreed stuff that kind of vaguely says you have good problem solving skills? That's really expensive, takes 4 years of your life, and supposedly makes you like a more thoughtful, creative person. I don't know.
Well, I think maybe college used to be a lot more worthwhile than it is now. It used to be a relatively elite sorting mechanism. If you had a 4-year college degree, then you were a rarity. It meant that you were your life was on track enough that you could afford to go to college and succeed at college, and the standards were higher. Now, college is easy to get into because, of course, you can just go into tons of debt to get there. High school degrees are utterly worthless, so the bar for getting into college is basically non-existent. Many colleges
certainly there's competitive colleges, though, right? Like that's
there are some competitive colleges, but college, just broadly speaking, is not competitive.
Sure.
And many colleges, even big colleges, are getting rid of their SAT and ACT standards, and they're just allowing people for arbitrary reasons to be accepted, because everyone should have the opportunity to go to college, they say. So we should admit everyone. Now, I think this destroys the utility of a degree. It destroys the ability of companies to look at someone's degree and gauge whether or not the potential employee would be a useful hire.
So you're saying 40 years ago, with reasonable certainty, if someone had a degree in X, Y, or Z, they were competent in X, Y, or Z,
yes.
And that is decreasing by the decade or whatever.
Yes, I think
by
rapidly.
now you're not as certain. You're not even as certain. And in fact, not only could you say they were good in this particular domain, but they could write competently. Would that be a fair thing to say? Maybe 40 years ago, I wonder if that's true, but it seems to be.
I would say so. Yeah.
And now,
I would say so.
And now I can verify that's not the case. That's not the case. People that have multiple degrees,
Well, I mean, you as a teacher, you can speak to the high school side of this, and I mean, you're not even in the public school system, but I mean, how objective are grades?
Not.
How rigorous are grades?
That's a better question too. Not. I think
Not.
that's a more interesting one than objective, because you're never going to get completely objective, and I can be comfortable with that because we can determine quality reasonably. But
especially in a class like English, that's fair enough. That's even I accept that you can't necessarily have an objective grade in English.
But you can get reasonable about it. You can get within. It's not some wild conjecture of why this is an A paper and this is a B paper. Although it would be ridiculous to try to justify a 92 versus a 93, and that's the problem. I can't get into that justification between a 92 and a 93. Anyway. But that's so. I don't know. Kind of lost my train of thought, but.
Well, I mean, it's just that grades they're just kind of tossed out like candy.
Oh, yeah, grade
they're very subjective, and that actually decreases the value of your degree. And we see this spread. Like high school didn't used to be meaningless. It used to be if you had a high school diploma, that meant something. Now it doesn't mean anything. Now a high school diploma means nothing. And actually now I think an associate's degree means nothing. A bachelor's degree means almost nothing. A master's degree is just kind of like, oh, well, I guess they're trying. I think that there is almost no educational certificate that proves that you really know your stuff anymore. There's nothing like that. You simply have to have published research, or you have to have a product. You have to have something tangible that you can say, look what I made in this field. Look what I discovered or invented or whatever. And that's the only way you can prove your stuff. Otherwise, it's all just a guess. I don't envy companies having to hire people right now.
I guess that's so difficult. Let's say you're completely right, and I tend to agree. I do agree. Then why not throw out the system and start with just apprenticeships? Where could this go wrong? I actually want to think because we know that any system can be abused, and so the college systems got really competitive, and people are paying to get their kids in or donating to the school, or all sorts of shady business, cheating on SAT. Lots of things happen that are shady that get kids that aren't particularly strong or deserving based on their merits, but they get into these institutions by way of legacy or whatever. So is the same issue going to be plagued if the businesses are doing the apprenticeships? And if so, is it any worse than college, or would it sort itself out sort of because they're not producing?
I think it would sort itself out because businesses have a financial incentive to hire the best candidates, not the nephew candidates or the legacy candidates or whatever. Their bottom line is affected by the quality of their employees. With a college, that's not the way it is.
Oh, you're right. You get a bad student and give them a degree. Your reputation can vaguely take a hit, but what's one or a dozen out of all these students? Whereas you put someone who's ill-equipped to lead people in a powerful position, and you're in trouble, as a business.
Right. I can speak to you ask, how should we change the system or whatever? I can actually speak to personal experience. You'll recall my first job out of college when I was just a fresh graduate. I started work at a big company, who their model was a lot like what you're talking about. They put me in a training program. They had a whole gigantic building and classes. They hired teachers that their only job was to teach new hires. And I had to take, it was, I don't remember how many months, 4 or 5 months of
this is
classes.
A new system then. Yeah, this is kind of what I'm talking about.
It was really neat. And
with big companies, yeah.
Right. And to step back just a bit, when I applied for the job, when I interviewed, my interview was essentially an IQ test, a personality test, and then a face-to-face conversation. And that was essentially, it was a day-long event. That was essentially my interview. And if I were going to hire people, then I don't care about what college they went to or even their major, really. I care about how smart are they? Are they going to be a good fit for the position in terms of temperament? And are they suited to deal with the subject matter that the position deals with? And that's basically what they tested me for at this company. And then, of course, they interviewed me face-to-face to make sure I wasn't, some kind of weirdo.
Right.
And then they hired me. So I wasn't a weirdo. Hooray!
Not too much of a weirdo, I guess. Yeah,
right.
Within the weirdo threshold that they had.
Within the weirdo threshold, yeah. And then they trained me for a few months, and I worked the job. And my experience at that company wasn't positive after that, but I don't think that's because of the system they had in place. I actually think the system they had in place is a really excellent one, and they're very profitable, and it works for them. It didn't work in my particular case, but that was more because I just didn't like the job. But I think that's an excellent process for hiring and for training.
So did your degree get you the opportunity to get the job interview? How did they come about? How did they decide what candidates to hire? Because that would be the big question if after high school everyone's just a mad dash rush to apply to different stuff. now businesses have to sort that out. Right now, colleges have to sort that out, right? But businesses would have to then sort it out. Would they be giving IQ tests and personality quizzes, like you said? Like, is it just what would happen? The norm? You go to Publix and go, oh, you want to work as a clerk, maybe? I mean, I don't know. Maybe not at Publix because they wouldn't care as much about your IQ. Maybe. I don't mean that negatively. They might not
well,
care.
Their standards would probably be a little lower. I imagine that. Yeah, you're probably right that Publix wouldn't make you take an IQ test to work there. But they would probably, I don't know. I mean, like high school kids work at Publix. Like you don't have to, have a lot of knowledge. You just have to be able to do some basic stuff and walk around and be relatively friendly.
Well, consider this then. Okay, so kids are still going to high school, but now their little job on the side, or whatever it may be. I know it's different things to different people. Some people don't work in high school. Some people have to work, and some people, their parents want to instill some values and whatever. And
right.
But I think it changes the game. I think what you're doing in high school is. This could be negative, by the way. This is my first time coming across something that could be messed up. Is like there becomes pressure, like coming out of middle school, to go ahead and start gearing up toward that forever job. So you want to be a lawyer, you better go be an intern there, or you better work as even like a receptionist. Whatever you do, like go get that job at the end as an intern or low level job there. And so it's like really valuable. Everyone that wants to be a doctor is going to this hospital to clean bedpans or whatever in 8th grade, 9th grade. It might back things up. It's already too young to me to be deciding your life so early. So that's a negative, I think, is that your high school job is now not just a high school job, I feel like.
See, I could see how that could be the case, but I don't think that would be any more of a problem than it is right now. I mean, how much surgeon experience does cleaning a bedpan give you? Basically none. I mean, it familiarizes you with the environment, sure, and it familiarizes you with being in a patient setting, yes. But really, are those skills that you couldn't learn after 2 weeks on the job or 2 weeks in a higher level internship or something? Like
You're right.
I don't think that would be a filtering mechanism.
But this is unearthing what the whole thing about college and what the real reason college exists and the real reason you'd want to get that job as a high school kid that's important isn't the job itself, it's networking. I mean, is college not
No.
I'll say the word elite, but I think that's what it is. I think saying I have a Harvard degree means something because that's the networking. Like, I have the power of Harvard. I have the networking behind that.
Absolutely. There's utility in networking in college, but you say Harvard, but there are so many colleges that aren't Harvard. And, we're arguing for the value of college as a whole. And, maybe Harvard has the name recognition. Name recognition built up over decades when they were more and more, when it actually meant something, right? Like, will the name Harvard mean the same thing in 40 years? I suspect definitely not. Like, I think that the big name colleges in the future will be even less valuable because we're continuing to devalue college degrees at an ever-increasing rate. So the name recognition can only go so far. I mean, reality eventually steps in. Yeah, right. I mean, but what you say, you make a valid point about networking. Like, when you're in college, you're around people who are, pursuing the same field as you are, learning from professors who are presumably in the field that you want to go into. There are networking opportunities, sure. But I wonder if without college, you couldn't pursue networking opportunities in 4 years for a much more efficient cost. I think you could get away without college. I think there are alternatives and all. I'm just saying it seems to me historically, and maybe networking isn't even the right word. I'm talking about something big, like all-encompassing, the politicking, we're humans, and like whenever we want to hire someone let's say we're in a position of power, we're going to hire someone, and it's a valuable position. So potentially thousands can apply now, right? Like through all sorts of things like ZipRecruiter or whatever, and it's a desirable position. So boom, you get 1,000 resumes. I'm going to, as a human being with limited grasp on all of this, I'm going to go,
let me search my brain for who do I know, who have I seen, who can I talk to and reach out to. So my friend tells me they trust this person. Well, then I'm going to give that person an interview. And so I'm talking about, the doctor who really, the little bedpan cleaner. I keep going to bedpan cleaning. I don't know why, but they are really kind. They're always cordial. They're on time. They're polite, and they have expressed interest, and they got the doctor a Christmas gift. And it's just the presence of mind that places within the doctor of that person. I don't know. That's invaluable. It's sadly overly valued. It's not like I'd like to think of a world that's ideal and like whoever's the best and the most qualified gets the position, but it's totally not that way. And so
it's
all
not
of
that.
this would.
Sure, I mean,
there's no way to avoid that, really, though. There's just not a way to have that perfect society. So no alternative to college is going to stop the politicking of it.
Right. I mean, even if I agree with you that is commonplace, and even if I agree with you that it's overvalued, I don't think that makes up larger than 1% of hires. Like, I don't think it's that overwhelming. Like, there aren't enough people in the right time and place to, for nepotism to be the reason that they're hired. There's not enough people in that situation. Like, I mean, if you're a doctor,
that's okay. This is where we agree on a lot of things. I feel like we're maybe further apart on this one. I wish I could get a third person to weigh in, or I wish we could have that poll machine right now. Just because I think hires are not influenced by like nepotism 100. Like that's a strong word, but like
that's what you're describing.
Just sort of
basically,
what's been on your mind, what's in your current thought patterns, who you've seen recently, and what's in front of you. And so,
but how often is if you are an auto mechanic and you're wanting to hire a new mechanic for your garage, how many people do you personally know or are second degree acquaintances who are all of the above, suitable for the job, in need of a job, and available for the job? Like, those things, like these, it's a coincidence if that sort of thing happens. Now, it does happen where, the garage manager might be like, oh, let me talk to my old friend Terry. His son is, just out of school looking for a job, I think. Let me call Terry up, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, sure, maybe the connection there gets someone a job at the garage. But I think that is the rarity. That's the exception, not the rule. Most of the time, you have to put out an ad to look for people to apply for your job. And the more specialized the job, the less likely it is that you just have some connection that, they're going to fall into the position.
So let me frame college in a unique way then. Like, what if, people try to get near where they want to be. It's good to be near or adjacent to the thing you want to do. So that's what a college degree, you could argue, is. It's like me shouting out, hey, I'm interested in this. In fact, I'm just sitting here learning all about it, ready when you are, jobs. And so the 4-year degree is a stamp of approval of this. Like, it's like saying I'm close to what I want to be doing. I don't know if that's very useful for this conversation now that I think about it. It just is like,
look,
but it's still just saying I'm interested in the position and I'm
You're
near
right.
it.
Like, you're right. That has some value, but I want to quantify that value. I think that value is low. I think that an employer, if you had an energetic applicant and who really showed that they wanted the job and were able to fill the position in an interview, that would settle that would be more valuable than looking at their resume and seeing that they spent 4 years studying in the general area. So,
but I think
I will tell you.
Go ahead.
I'll give you. If I had to criticize our proposed apprenticeship sort of world that we vaguely defined, if I had to criticize that and say why, what's a reason why we don't do that, it's because then you get many specialized tools. So let's again pick me. I went to this company after college and they trained me. That training was pretty specialized. That training is worthless to me now. I spent however many months being trained for that job. I discovered I didn't like the job. I left. That was a wasted time on my part. It was wasted money on the company's part, and that was essentially all for naught. I mean, it was a good lesson, I guess, for me, but aside from that, it was kind of meaningless. And so an apprenticeship system, kind of like we're proposing, the boundaries between where you start and where you end up, between a career where you start and a career where you may want to move towards, those are harder boundaries. It's harder to leave where you've already started. Almost like there's more career momentum, because there's a lot of sunk cost. Once you're on a path, you can't easily leave the path and go to something else. And that's a downside. And a college degree ideally provides you, like, if I got an engineering degree, that degree ideally provides me with a broad but still somewhat specialized and practical level of knowledge that I can use in many different fields. Whereas if I didn't get an engineering degree and just went straight to work at a software company or a like a medical device company or whatever other company, and they trained me on the job, it would be much harder for me to move to something else afterwards.
I mean, that's the term critical thinking, right? That's what is sort of promised vaguely by your degree. You are a critical problem solver. You can be exposed to new information and think freely, and you are, yeah.
Well, I don't think that college gives you that necessarily. It may hone those innate abilities. I think that the utility in college, particularly for something like an engineering degree, is that it gives you a broad set of broadly applicable knowledge. There's some, it shows that you have the perseverance and blah blah blah. But I think that if you were an employer, getting the IQ test, that really tells you. If you get an IQ test and a personality test, then you basically know how successful someone's going to be. It's just a matter of how much time are you willing to put into how much they know. If they have a high IQ, you know that they have the ability to learn effectively. If they have the right temperament, the right personality for your job, you know that they're not gonna start crying under stress, or that they'll be able to be diligent, or whatever the case may be. You know that. The only thing you don't know is whether they know the specific details relevant to your job, and that's where training could come in. So, I think the more efficient course of action is this sort of apprenticeship world that we're proposing. I think that's great, but the economics of it might not work out. It's expensive to train people. You have to, on-the-job training is one thing, but you basically have to eat the cost of having an ineffective employee for a while, and that's expensive. And it's a gamble that they're going to stay in your job and not leave.
They might be less likely to leave, though. If you have a degree which makes you broadly applicable, you can leave, whereas someone might feel more invested. That, I don't know. I'm not talking psychologically. That might be torture and mean, but
sure,
for the company, it's a benefit that there's pressure to stay. You're specialized here. You can't leave. Right.
Yeah. Well, we could at least pitch a psychological situation in which this is beneficial for everyone, because if you have a college degree, then you may come into a job with the employer expecting that you have a certain level of knowledge already, and then when you're in the real world and you find that, wait a second, I didn't learn how to do this, well, that's very uncomfortable for an employee to be in that position. Whereas if the employer knows you're coming into the job with no hands-on knowledge, their expectations are set appropriately, and you come in and you learn on the job. You don't have to feel like, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm supposed to. You feel like, I don't know what I'm doing and, I'm not supposed to know what I'm doing, and that's what they're teaching me for. And
I guess if they took up the training, first of all, a lot of job training programs are horribly ill-equipped to do. A lot of schools are just like, all right, go teach the curriculum. And I'm not saying my school is like that. I'm just saying that that exists, right? We hired you to teach English 9. Go teach English 9. Here are the books. Or you're hired to, I don't know, I can imagine a lot. But when the expectations are adjusted accordingly, like you said, I know where you're at. And that way, ideally, they train you for maximum efficiency. But if you come in with the sort of knowledge like we have now, like the assumptions and that are probably wrong in some cases and right in others, I think a business is open to like whatever, they don't have as much control over their culture, right? They bring someone in who's like knows what they're doing, but they don't know exactly how this company does it, so they just don't do it the way the company does it. They do it their own way, or they scoff at the rules and go, "That's kind of dumb. I'm doing it my own way," and no one really stops them, and your culture can slide. But by training your own employees how you want something done and all, you have more autonomy over your workers and your culture. I don't know if that's good for the individual worker. But it seems good for the company. But like you said, it's really expensive. And by year 3, is there any difference between the educated person outside of the company or the educated by the company? I don't know if like productivity would be markedly different after 3 years. So I just don't know. That would be interesting data, right? The long-term employee, 5 years into the job, if this company trained them, would they be more efficient than they would have been if they just got their degree and then came in? I don't know.
Well, I would imagine that if someone is trained on the job and persists for 3 years, they would be just. I mean, by that point, the skill gap between them and a college degreed person would be so minimal that it almost wouldn't matter. And that means that that's the better course of action because the employee didn't have to pay for 4 years of college to get there. That's my guess.
Right.
So. Yeah, I wish that. All good thoughts, yes. Yeah.
That's gonna be my new transition, my signal for like, all right, you got something new. All good thoughts.
Stop talking about this. Stop it.
We are going to transition now, just like papers.
I have something brand new for us, a new segment.
Ooh.
Yeah. Not a retread of superpowers and drawbacks or mind your morals or any of that stuff. I love those. But yeah. I've got a new segment that I want to try out.
Oh, I bet it has I hope it has a catchy name. Here we go.
It's called This or That. This or that.
This. That was faster than I thought. But
there we go.
I like it though. You know, you never know what you're gonna get. Okay, dumb joke.
This or that. It's a very simple idea. It's, sometimes my segments are clever. This one's not really that clever. It's very simple. I'm going to give you a bunch of binary choices. They're just 2 words or phrases, and you have to choose quickly. It's a quick sort of thing, a gut reaction. You have to choose this or that. The first one I say or the second one I say. And
do I explain why?
Not immediately. The metric by which the metric by which you're comparing these things is left totally up to you, and it's really up to your gut instinct. However you envision these comparisons in the instant that you hear them, you make the call, you say it, and move on, and then we'll go back and figure out why you chose the ones that you did.
Letting my emotional side or whatever go wild, and then go back afterward and logically unpack why do I think I chose that one.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, whether it's emotion or just knee-jerk or one's more familiar or whatever. But yeah,
something
it's an impulsive
sort of... Impulsive, yeah.
Yeah, an impulsive decision between these 2 things, and then we'll go back and see why. Most of them will probably be obvious. Most of them will just be, I like this thing better, and that's a fine reason. And some of them might be a little more complex or surprising. Who knows? We'll see. It may be really boring. I don't know. But I think I've got a big list that I typed out today, but I think we're going to stick to only 15. And
so I won't remember them. Can you click what I chose or whatever? Okay, like highlight it or whatever. I don't know. Maybe it might be worth marking which one I choose quickly. I don't know. I'm so ready for this.
I don't have a really great way to do that, but I will do my best for that. Let me move my mic so that I can do this as quickly as I can. It's not going to be super quick, but answer as quickly after.
I should remember when you go back to the choice. It'd be weird if I changed afterward. Wouldn't it be weird if once I slowed down I changed? All right, here we go. I'm ready. I'm going to answer as quickly as I can.
All right, here we go. This or that. Frisbee or dart?
Dart.
An afternoon nap or a job well done?
Job well done.
Phonograph or lightsaber?
Phonograph.
Michael Jackson or Michael Jordan?
Michael Jordan.
Knuckle popping or a strong yawn?
Strong yawn.
Socks or gloves?
Socks.
Crossword puzzle or word search?
Word search.
Beetle or a worm?
Beetle.
A furniture store or a clothing store?
Clothing store.
Reese's or Kit Kats?
Reese's.
Oven baked or char grilled?
Char grilled.
Spaghetti or lasagna?
Neither. Lasagna.
Emerald or amethyst?
Emerald.
1776 or 1945?
1945.
March or September?
September.
Baseball or stand-up comedy?
Stand-up comedy.
All right, there we go. That's 15.
That was fun. I'm like grinding my hands together, like pretty, like I was really intense about it. And I wonder if there's any way to do some personality tests just on things like that.
Probably so. Yeah, probably so. I mean, it kind of is a personality test in a way if I chose my categories wisely, but I'm not trying to analyze you. There's no trick to this. It really is pure and simple.
Well, I like it. I almost want to talk about my choices because, you know.
Well, yeah,
I don't know,
that's what I want to do is go back and ask why you chose the ones you did, and like now think about it and tell me why you made the choices you did.
Because they might be all over the place. Yeah.
This is also a segment, by the way, that it's so simple you could do it too.
I like this. It's so simple. I could do it too.
It's so simple. Even a Daniel could do it.
Even Daniel could do it. Well,
all right,
it'd be fun for people to participate by yelling out loud too. I don't know.
Yes.
Like, see how close we get. It'd be satisfying to yell the same thing.
Yes, it would be. I was thinking the same thing. So.
And we can be enemies if you say the other thing.
Yes.
I'm
so mad at Facebook.
The delay's so bad.
I'm so mad at Facebook for this bullcrap.
Especially on a speed round of things. It's funny.
It's just infuriating. All right. Yeah, I'll have to figure out how to not deal with this. All right. But anyway, to the task at hand. Between Frisbee and Dart, you chose Dart. Why did you choose Dart?
This is interesting. I don't know. I think initially I'm just panicked. Because I like Frisbees better. If you were to give me an option of having a Frisbee, going to play Frisbee or going to play darts, I would choose Frisbee. But darts are kind of sexy and sleek and cool. And It's also the word itself at the time. Frisbee's a little goofy. And I was in a pretty serious mindset when you were like, choose. So I was like, I'm intense. I felt intense right at the beginning. And dart was more intense. And that's most likely why I said it.
Fair enough. That's the exact kind of thing I like learning those metrics. What made you choose?
Yeah, because it's not the thing I liked. It wasn't simply I like darts more. Like no, like I was feeling intense and darts more intense. But as we went on, it probably became more of what I like. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, for most of them, I figure it will just be your preference, but I don't know. Sometimes some of the wacky ones. So. All right, so between an afternoon nap and a job well done, why did you choose a job well done?
That actually felt like I did some thinking on the spot, of which I value more, and I really value both. I like a good nap, but a job well done, like a pat on the back, a recognition, an affirmation of the world, like there's nothing better than that. Like a nap just doesn't compare. Like a nice nap is just sort of self-contained, but yeah, a job well done is affirming. Even if it's not someone else telling me, it's like it's an ego boost if I know I produced something good. Like even if no one tells me, I can tell, right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And there's something healthy for me mentally about that. So it's almost like mental health over a pretty sizable mental health boost versus a very, very slight physical health boost.
Okay, fair enough. I hardly need to ask, but between phonograph and lightsaber, you chose phonograph. Why?
Yeah, well, just aesthetics.
You would have chosen phonograph over anything, over any other choice.
Edison bulb might have been tough.
Typewriter.
Typewriter, antique. I guess all typewriters are sort of antique. Yeah, look, if it were like an actual lightsaber, you know, the sort of like
It is actual lightsaber.
Well, I mean, I guess so, but like you're not saying do you want one or the other. You're just saying which is more appealing to you and which. And
No, I wasn't saying anything. The metric is up to you. So
that's actually it then. So I wasn't interpreting it as like which would I choose. If I could have a real deal lightsaber, then yeah. I mean, but I wasn't choosing which one I would have. I was choosing which one
Right.
fits my aesthetic or which one I just, yeah, that's what I'll say. It fits my aesthetic, the phonograph.
Yeah, totally 100% what I expected. I would have been shocked if you chose lightsaber over
I
phonograph.
would have probably just freaked out and been saying the wrong word for some reason.
So Michael Jackson and Michael Jordan. You chose Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I recently saw a Michael Jordan documentary and on Netflix, like a mini series, and it made me respect him. Well, I don't have respect for Michael Jackson because I've also seen the HBO documentary that pretty much solidifies him as a pedophile. And so even though his music I think is so awesome and almost timeless in terms of pop music. So what?
Do you really
like,
think his music
the
is
person,
awesome?
You're not listening to his music. I do. I honestly do. I find how about this? I have maybe a Pavlovian conditioning. When I hear it, I'm just like in a good mood. So I don't know if it's because other people get in a good mood. And isn't music social to some degree? Not all of it and not always, but it has a very close social ties with positive feelings for me. Whereas I came to understand Michael Jordan as like a warrior, a modern day warrior. And his war was, on the court, and like he's kind of a jerk.
That's
but
appropriate.
That's
See, he
what
played
Warriors.
for
It's appropriate.
Yeah, he played for the Chicago Warriors.
Yes, he did.
I think.
The Wizards. Later in his, not the Warriors. That's so funny. Yeah, the Chicago Warriors.
Yeah.
No, but so I just respect him and like a lot. So yeah.
So between knuckle popping and a strong yawn, you chose a strong yawn. What was your metric there?
I like both, and so which is more It was like which would give me the most relief and release. So I thought actually on the spot I did think this, which would if I really needed a yawn and could not, and I really wanted to pop my knuckles and could not, which would be more frustrating, and I think the yawn. And so a luxurious yawn is so great, and a good knuckle popping is the ceiling to the pleasure is lower than the yawn. Because the yawn, I get a stretch folded into it, and a good knuckle popping like has just a lower ceiling for me. Yeah.
Very interesting. When I was writing this one, when I chose it, I actually chose it because I wasn't sure whether your metric would be the one you chose, which one is more of a relief, or which one is more annoying to hear someone else do. I wasn't sure which.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people,
mine didn't go there. Yeah.
A lot of people when they, hear knuckle popping, they cringe and they hate it. And I know you in particular have a strong aversion to my yawns. So
your yawns do not affect me, and anyone like no yawn has ever bothered me. Your yawns bother me. Which is very funny. I don't have a thing against yawns. I have a thing against Bennett yawns. I've never been mad at anyone for yawning. That's the funny thing, except for you. So my mind doesn't. I don't hear yawns and kind of get triggered by like, oh, that's a pet peeve of mine. It's just your yawns. This particular pitch you hit. Anyway, getting mad. Just
all right. About it. So between socks and gloves, you chose socks. Why?
I don't. Like how many gloves have you worn in your life? Probably every time you've gone skiing.
Seven or 8.
Okay, 7. So, and how many socks have you worn?
Probably 12.
So like double. I literally just I bought a pair of no-show socks off of Amazon. I went cheap, which is not my usual style, but I had lots.
You're gonna have to show
reviews.
me those.
And so it was on the mind, like right before the podcast, I was putting them away actually. So yeah, there were no shows, and like they might be great. I can't show you them actually. So, by virtue of the name, and so they were inexpensive and they're on my mind. And like a good sock is like something I would research. Whereas if I'm just not in a situation where gloves are valuable to me. So just overall, very easy call. There's no metric by which glove wins, I guess, unless I'm like freezing. But then I'd still probably want, if I'm outside freezing, I'd probably want socks over gloves if I had to choose between. So there, yeah, I just cannot figure a situation in which gloves win.
What if you're picking up trash?
Okay, good point. Yeah, that's a good one. If I'm picking up trash,
there are definitely
if I'm doing something with my hands, you know.
Yeah.
If I'm picking
there are
up trash
situations
with my feet,
where gloves
then I
are
want
more
socks.
valuable than socks. Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course, right. As a surgeon, or if you have blood, if you're sorting through blood with your, it's just the obvious thing is you're like not using your feet, but you're using your hands. Then gloves are going to be more valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Between crossword puzzle and word search, you really hesitated on this one and went with word search.
Yeah. Crossword puzzle actually is what I would have answered. I think I just panicked and knew I needed an answer, and so I find crossword puzzles interesting, wordplay and all that. Word search are more juvenile. I'm more likely to do so if I'm let's say we're out to dinner and for some reason I have the kids menu and I've asked for crayons. That's not that unusual. Well, there's not a lot of words. There are word searches frequently, and they're almost never. Well, that's not true, but. Crossword puzzles are rare, but I will just do the word search. I could talk to you and do a word search. Word searches are just juvenile, and so that doesn't appeal to me as much as something more engaging. So if my metric is engagement, I'm choosing word search. Crossword. Funny how that doesn't come quickly to me. I think I've always tripped them up in my mind. I know they're very different, and I don't actually say it out loud, but I have to think about it when you put them right by each other. It's like remoulade and marmalade for me. I know the difference, but in my mind I go, wait a second, and then I get there. Is it crosswords and word searches? Same thing.
Yeah, I would definitely choose word search. I like word searches much better than crossword puzzles.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
I consider it among one of my many talents that I'm really good at word searches. I can do word searches really fast. In fact, in third grade, we would have multiple class-wide word searches, and I won multiple times. I'm just really good at word searches.
Part of your identity.
Out of all the third grade class, we had 16 kids or something. And I was really good at word searches. Crossword puzzles, they're fine. I don't hate crossword puzzles, but I'll tell you that I get annoyed by crossword puzzles because it requires trivia knowledge. And when I'm doing a crossword puzzle and I see, the actress that played in this Broadway play, I'm like, I don't know that. I would never know that. This has ceased being fun.
Right. That's fair.
Now,
I would have.
The part I do enjoy about crossword puzzles.
Sorry.
The part I do enjoy about crossword puzzles is the figuring out. I don't know this Broadway play, but I know that the second letter is an A and the fourth letter is a Y or whatever. And figuring that out, that's fun. But there's so much trivia in there that I just get frustrated, and I'm like, I don't care about this anymore.
I believe we were in Japan together when I had recently downloaded this crossword daily puzzle, and we'd play it sometimes.
That's right.
It was a lot of fun. For some reason we were pretty good at it, and it was just something to do. And so I link that right into Bennett's word game wheelhouse, whereas I think of word searches as juvenile. So I would have lost money betting you would have chosen crossword puzzle.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Word searches are more juvenile. I just like them better than crossword puzzles. Maybe because part of it is stress relief and it's satisfying to quickly find all the words.
Yeah.
That's kind of satisfying. Whereas crossword puzzles, they make you think, but it's not that figuring something out isn't that satisfying. But I do love word games. You're right, and I still like crossword puzzles, but unscrambling words, searching for words, I just like that a lot better. That's why I like Scrabble so much.
Did you ever get into Sudoku? Is that something you were into?
I've tried it, but I don't really like it. I don't know. It's not fun.
Totally think you would. I never got into it enough, though.
No, I don't find it fun. I find it kind of annoying. Just because, I don't know. I've only done it a handful of times. I've stuck with it a little bit, but I don't know, just solving them. It's kind of a brute force method. It just becomes like, oh, let me write these tiny numbers in the squares until I figure, by process of elimination, figure out which one it is. And I don't know. So I'm sure that people can get,
So
they can
how
build some
the
intuition.
people that are really good at it, they're not just doing brute force. Yeah.
No, I'm sure you build some intuition for it, but I hadn't built the intuition, and I can't imagine that building that intuition is super amazingly fun. I don't know. Maybe it is for people, but not for me. All right, beetle and worm. You chose beetle. Why?
The metric was grossness, and which would I rather like handle in my hands? Because I suppose if you had said you have to eat one, I would choose worm, even though because they'd both be unpleasant. But cracking through that exoskeleton would be disgusting in a beetle and its little legs and stuff. If I had to bite into it, but if I'm just my metric of grossness was like if I had to handle one, or beetles are actually really not gross to me. In fact, a lot of beetles look, in terms of bugs and insects, they seem very clean. Like their shell can be smooth, they can have bright colors, they can have little horns and be spotted sometimes. Like they just seem not as they're unusually not gross. Their factor of grossness is low in the insect world, but in just my random opinion, I guess they're not slimy. They look very dry and clean and colorful. And then by contrast, you've got this. I mean, earthworms or worms are. I went to earthworm. You didn't say earthworm, did you? You just said worm. But
Yeah, I just said worm.
But they're slimy and brown and gross and whatever. And so they're like the contrast is stark, and it was just easy for me to go beetle. Like no doubt when I was answering, I said beetle.
Fair enough. So between furniture store and clothing store, you chose clothing store.
That's
Why?
a tough one. I mean, I just value fashion more than I value furniture, and that's not useful. Because that's the whole point. I'm currently into fashion. I've already made my furniture choices, and so fashion is on the ever-present horizon. I am always looking because I can always use a new shirt or a pair of pants or some underwear or something. So I can always see what sort of technical fabrics and fun stuff and slim fits and six-way stretches and woven versus knitted and
Right.
hydrophobic stuff. I love all that stuff, and I also love cool furniture. But it's more like that. I play with clothes the way I buy furniture on an as needed basis, and I will play once I go, all right, I need a desk. I will like play looking at all the funky desks, and like I will have fun with it. But then I get my desk and I'm like done. But I've been known to buy a shirt and then go ahead and buy another shirt too, because the investment's much smaller. So yeah, I just am more likely to go play in terms of so I'd go. My metric was playfulness, I suppose, joy in shopping, and how often. Because I'd say the joy is about the same, but the frequency is higher with clothes.
It's really funny. When I was writing this, my metric that just came to my mind is which one is more boring, and I struggled really hard with that, and I don't have to answer, so I just wrote them both down. But that was my metric, is which is more boring, and I couldn't determine which one was more boring. That if you asked me if you played this or that, and you said furniture store or clothing store, that would be one where I hesitated and was like, oh, I don't know, because my metric would be which one is more boring, and then I wouldn't be able to decide.
You and I both might go, for a second, and we're doing it for very different reasons. For
very, very totally opposite reasons. Yeah. All right. Between Reese's and Kit Kats, you chose Reese's. Why?
It's the obvious taste, and Reese's I would put at you happen to list Reese's is arguably my favorite chocolate candy. Like that's it. And so if you would say Kit Kat and Twix, now I really like both of those. I mean, Kit Kat's no slouch. Kit Kats are great, but there's just no contest with Reese's. Reese's is going to dominate any chocolate you would have said. So it would have been more interesting to say Kit Kat or Twix, and then I just don't know. But
yeah, fair enough. It would have been the same for me as well. Reese's are my favorite too. So.
I guess you'd stay away from food because the metric becomes more obvious. I noticed you didn't say a lot of food. It could be gross stuff, possibly, or I don't know.
I don't know. I still think food is worthwhile to put in this or that because a lot of people listening are going to disagree with any of the choices we put
Sure.
in. So that's fine. Just because And just because it's an obvious choice to you doesn't mean it's obvious.
Isn't it
to
weird that I
everyone.
played that game and I could be net more likable or less likable to people just because I
Yes.
said some one of two words? Like maybe that's the greater
Yes.
point of this is like they feel closer or more disconnected to me,
Yeah,
and that's
in a
absurd.
way.
Yeah.
Yes, in a way, that is.
This
I
seems
thought
like this
about
could be
that
the
too.
thing of dating profiles. Like you sign up live to something you've matched with. Like it just pairs you with someone random. So it's like Bennett and Amanda, and then you go through rapid fire, and you're both swiping, and you can kind of see like or it
yeah,
reveals.
that's interesting.
That would be like fun, and then talk about your choices if you want.
That would be kind of fun.
I don't know. Like there's some gamification there. This is like I like that. So.
Well, it's the Third Space Podcast, gamification. We did it first.
Yes.
You heard it first here, folks.
Copyright.
Copyright, trademark.
Trademark. That's it. That's the
Reserved.
word. Reserved. All rights. All of them.
all of-
all of
all
the
of them.
rights.
All of your rights are reserved. All right, oven baked or char grilled? You chose char grilled.
Yes. I just char grilled, flame kissed, like easy for me. Oven baked. Baking is probably one of the more boring forms of cooking. Basically, it's like, do you want baked chicken or do you want like flame grilled and char grilled? Like, are you kidding me right now? You know, the only thing worse than baking, I think it gets into boiled.
Boiled, yeah.
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 So pan seared is awesome sounding too, but no, I think when
Yes.
you get into char grilled and flame kissed, like that, flame kissed is just the funny adjective almost, but yeah, like easy for me. It's just tasty.
I knew
Kinda want
I
the
knew
taste.
you would pick that one. I knew 100% you would pick that one, just like the phonograph one. Like I knew there was no contest there.
Do you feel like you would too, though? Like, are you in agreement with me, or is there?
Yes, I am. I mean, even like you have the funny connection to the words and to the, I guess, the feeling that comes from the words, but you also have an objective standard, and I do too, that grilled food tastes better than baked food more often. So
Yeah, I think that's what happened, and then I got emotionally attached to it, like flame
Yes.
kissed and stuff. So, but I did
I'm
for
all-
a reason, so I don't know.
yeah. All right, so spaghetti and lasagna. You had a hard time with this one. You chose lasagna.
I don't care enough. I've never ordered spaghetti or lasagna ever from like a restaurant. If someone says we're having spaghetti tonight, my mom made this sort of. I'd have to ask her, like spaghetti, like unlike I've ever had, and I suspect not because it's high quality, but I like it more. It's just thicker sauce, and like she just grinds the meat up. It's not meatballs. There's just meat all throughout it, like, and it just. Anyway, that's just a trip down memory lane. It was unlike any other spaghetti I've ever had. But lasagna, I guess you could get into different cheeses and ricotta, and like there's some layers, and there's just more to do. I guess we have spaghetti and meatballs, but like you're pretty limited. You can get a few different sauces, I'm sure. But
Yeah,
but
there's great poems written about lasagna.
gosh, throwback, yeah. But I would just if you said you got to eat lasagna for a month or spaghetti for a month, and you can order all the different kinds you want, I have a feeling the fatigue of lasagna would be less. Like I could handle the dip throwing. I'm gonna hate both. I'm gonna be very bored. I'm bored of lasagna by the time I'm done eating it. Like I'm bored of it now. Just you talking about it has like really reset my like desire. I'd say I eat lasagna less than once a year, and you've already filled my lasagna and spaghetti quotient by just discussing it and making me consider it.
We're actually very similar. Everything you've said, I basically agree with, down to the fact that I've never ordered either one ever.
By the way, it's not gross either. I wouldn't be like if someone's mom, like if my girlfriend's mom made this, she's like so proud of her lasagna. Like I would just have no issue being like like, and I'm sure it'd be above average, right? If it's her dish, and like if she wanted to make it every time, I wouldn't dread it. I'd just be like, this is a bland, to me, like a boring meal. I don't, that's probably an unpopular opinion. I'd like to know how many.
I think so.
Do people love lasagna? I think they do.
I think people love lasagna and spaghetti. I think that people hate us now.
Yeah, well, they have just bad opinions,
Yeah, I don't like spaghetti, and I have no regretty.
But do you feel similar? Do you not? It's not only. It's just like I don't want it, but I don't feel passionate about it. It's just.
Yes. Well, so I definitely prefer lasagna to spaghetti. I have eaten lasagna that I thought was tasty. I've never eaten spaghetti that I thought was tasty. It was just a thing I put in my mouth and swallowed. lasagna is cheesy, and I've had very cheesy lasagna that was pretty tasty, but I still would never order it. There's always something better than lasagna, and definitely something better than spaghetti. So, and I have extra distaste for spaghetti because when I was a kid, my grandpa would make spaghetti like once a week, and he used this watery sauce and with big chunks of tomato in it, and it was just gross, and I hated it. It was my least favorite meal that he would make. So yeah, spaghetti, no good.
Would you rather have the best lasagna you've ever had? Like the best one you've actually ever had, you get it again, or the bottom 5% of pizza you've ever had that is not messed up. It's just okay. The pizza already, yeah,
yeah, pizza, like a Papa John's pizza or something.
Yeah, just a little older and not fresh Papa John's, but like it's not bad. It's not gone. It's not going to give you stomach issues.
So all right, so let me rethink this and try to be fully transparent, because actually at the restaurant I used to work at in high school and college, we had lasagna there, rarely, but it was good. It was pretty good. It's very cheesy.
Would they do anything like goat cheese or something fancy?
Yeah, there was some fancy cheese in there, and it was pretty tasty. And if you're telling me that this is kind of old, not fully heated Papa John's pizza versus this melty cheese gourmet lasagna.
It's 2 day old. Your mom heated it up in the microwave for you, but you came down 5 minutes later. So it's just that's what you're getting.
Yeah, okay. I think I would choose the lasagna in this case. That delicious lasagna.
I think I would too. But even then, I'd just be like, order the pizza, whatever. But like it's pretty close.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't let it affect my opinion of it though. That's for damn sure. I would eat that lasagna and say, yeah, I'd probably rather have pizza than this. I wouldn't be happy about it. That's the ultimate goal. I eat that lasagna, but I wouldn't be happy about it.
Is Papa John's
is freaking delicious.
What's your least favorite just call fast food pizza, whatever that is?
Well, that's hard to say. There's probably a bunch of crappy ones that I've had like once in like the middle of nowhere that are like non-chains or something.
Hungry Howie's or something. Yeah.
Yeah, Hungry Howie's is pretty not that good, but Papa John's, I don't like the taste of their sauce. It's too sweet.
Yeah, it's distinct. Yeah.
I'll actually avoid Papa John's pizza if I can. But I don't know. Other than that, like at least the big chains are pretty. They're all pretty edible.
That's the thing. Domino's is amazing. Their pan pizza, like, gosh.
Yeah. Domino's is one that I like a lot. I also like Jet's Pizza, which is not as widespread, but there's one here where I am, and I really like it. It's like Little Caesars, but better quality. They have rectangular pizzas in their deep dish, and there's lots of cheese. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's competitive with Domino's. All right, moving forward. Emerald or amethyst? You chose emerald. Why?
Because I don't know what amethyst is.
Oh man, should have saved that for Daniel Does Science.
I'm embarrassed. I'm actually going to Google that. How do you spell it?
Daniel Does Geology. It's a purple crystal. Amethyst.
Okay.
It's less valuable, and emerald is kind of the obvious choice.
Oh, I've seen that. It's those purple, where they're half cracked open rock looking thing, and it's all crystally looking. A lot of those are popping up.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess amethyst isn't a geode.
A geode, yeah.
But
I'd still go with emerald, even with the knowledge of both.
Yeah, I'd choose emerald because Sonic the Hedgehog collects the chaos emeralds. No one collects chaos amethysts. Those don't even do anything.
And the greenness of it, or the emerald color, I suppose, is really pleasant. Yeah.
Yeah. 1776 and 1945. You chose 1945. Why?
Because more current. And then I'm more like, if I were to have a pizza from one of those 2 years, I'd probably want to, have a pizza. If I were to exist in one of those 2 years, I'd probably exist in 1945. Just, more current.
Fair enough.
It was actually as stupid as that. 'Cause I was like, well, yeah, okay.
And March and September, you chose September for the same reason, I assume?
Closer to my birthday, or
more
current?
Just more recent.
More recent in my mind.
More current.
My dad's birthday's in September. That's what I thought. I was like,
okay.
That had a reason, like, and I'm bad with birthdays. I know very few people's birthdays, but no one's birthday came to mind, and my dad's went out for September. You know, and 9/11, like, that's a thing. So weird to say.
It is a thing.
It's just like when you're flash going, what's the significance of the month? Like, those are like
Right.
those two things. My dad's birthday and 9/11. Those are like two things that came to mind.
Baseball and stand-up comedy. You chose stand-up comedy.
Yeah, baseball just I have nothing against it. Look, but like I don't care. I have trouble caring at all. Stand-up comedy, the idea appeals to me. Like, and I'm also, if you think of stand-up comedians as like, there's very few professions in which you're paid to sort of speak publicly and tell narratives and engage an audience, and like a comedian's expected to do a set, like on the spot, get up and be funny, and that's one of the most difficult challenges. So if you are able to do that, like, much respect. Because it's so contrived, right? Get up and be funny. And everyone's expecting this person's a comedian, go. And so they have to really be artful in their story. And so they're sort of mastering their craft and getting from listening to comedians in their interviews is like, and you hearing them retell their jokes, it's amazing how much they have down not only word for word, but like the pauses, feeding off the audience, the mannerisms. And so that's just, as someone who respects public speaking skills, I can really be enthralled behind all of the work that goes into producing a good stand-up comedy. And I share some kinship as a teacher. I'm certainly no stand-up comedian, but like, I get it. I get what it means to feed off a crowd. There's some kinship there. So yeah, you got my nay joke, right? I'm there. So there. And then baseball I have no relationship to. I have a relationship to stand-up comedy in the form of teaching and making jokes and valuing humor and
Because education is a joke nowadays.
Yeah. Man.
Everyone's a comic. That's what
Everyone's a comic of education.
Yeah, I don't like stand-up comedy. I'm not a fan.
So which would you choose in that scenario? I guess you can't play the game because you've thought about it considerably.
Yeah, I can't play the game with those choices. I think I would have chosen baseball. Even though, I have yet to fix baseball. I can fix baseball.
You played baseball,
I did play baseball.
Would it be a relationship reason for choosing, or would you rather go to a baseball game than a stand-up comedy routine, and is that why?
I would rather go to neither one.
But you could see a thing like you, me, and David just go into a baseball game and like walking around the stadium and like talking and stuff, being an enjoyable experience, I assume. Like, that wouldn't be so bad. Just like on a nice day. And
you're right.
We don't care about the game that much.
I've gone to a baseball game under those circumstances, and it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I had the choice, I would rather hang out with my friends not at a baseball game and.
There's
in a more interesting
stadiums are crazy. Any stadium is fun. They're wild construction, so just exploring them is interesting to me. So.
And that's why I would have chosen it. I would have chosen baseball because there are things about baseball that I find interesting. Like, the stadiums are cool. Like, I think the aesthetic of the green grass and the brown, dirt and the diamond. Like, I think that all looks very cool and aesthetic, and the physics of throwing a pitch and smacking it with a bat, and the thrill of a home run or grand slam happening, like, those are all cool things, but they make up a teeny tiny portion of the baseball game experience. But contrast that with the stand-up comedy, which I don't enjoy it. I don't find most stand-up comics funny. Like, it's just so apparent that it's not genuine. It's an act. I can't get past that. I can't suspend my disbelief for stand-up comedy, and it just, I don't know, it doesn't make it through to me, and I just find myself getting more annoyed when I watch it.
Yeah, fair enough.
So there we go. That was this or that.
I like it.
I like it too. It's kind of fun.
It could be I like the idea of starting a podcast with like a philosophical like exploration of ideas, and then the this or that is it's lighthearted, and it just justify your sort of arbitrary metrics that pop into your head, and that's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very lighthearted, and like I think it's a good starter segment because you can pick on any one of those things and it starts a conversation. Like we kind of did that multiple times. I didn't expect it to take as long as it did, but it was fun. So I like it. Let's do it again.
We should.
Not right now, but on a future podcast.
Yeah.
So I have another thing that I wanted to talk about, and it's not. I guess it's not a huge topic, but I want to talk about identity, and it kind of ties into some of the things you were talking about when you were talking about education earlier. So first off, let me just ask you, what is your identity?
Ugh. That feels so loaded when you say that. My head goes in a bunch of different directions. Really? I'll answer you. The first thing was like, I'm a teacher and a son and a boyfriend and a friend.
Okay.
And so I guess that's almost the titles, the hats I wear. That's sort of what came to mind. And then the second layer that washed over me was the sort of a politically imposed or loaded term where I'm like, cisgendered straight white male thing. And then that made me go, ugh, because that feels like that's imposed on me, or that's just sort of some given things that don't reflect. And then the sort of third wave for me is like, my identity is in things like intellectual discussion, and where can those be found, like whether it's a talk on the phone or watching a really good movie or reading a really good book. Not just an intellectual conversation, but a playful and funny one. So humor and intellect and wit are things I value. Also adventure, sense of adventure, like wanting to explore. And that also actually falls into like curiosity. So curiosity has adventure and intellect folded into it. Like I want to know more, and what's over here, and what is this all about? So there's a sort of a short answer for you.
Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. You basically outlined all the things that I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit. So one of the things that I thought about when I was thinking about how to introduce the topic was the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic identity. So, when you say what is your identity, depending on your context, if you're standing at like an airport, check booth or whatever, and someone says, "What is your identity?" You're not going to give them the same answer that you just gave me. You're going to hand them, your passport or your ID, and they're going to look at it and go, "Okay, you're Daniel, so come on." And that's not what we're talking about. That's extrinsic identity. That's kind of like how other people perceive you, who you are, what you look like, who you are, that kind of thing. But intrinsic identity is, how you view yourself, or the what you listed. A teacher. All the levels that you listed are intrinsic identity, or at least can be considered intrinsic identity. So that's what I want to. I think that's the more interesting one because no one cares what you look like. Really.
The topic surface level, the topical stuff. Like, okay, yes.
Yeah,
the answer is like yes,
really
but it's hard to talk about. It's like I'm this tall and this many pounds. It's like there's not much to say beyond that. You could get into like what's proper weight, I suppose, but there's just not much room to explore.
Right. The intrinsic part is what's really interesting because there's a psychological component to it. So that's kind of what I want to talk about. But I want to approach. It's a topic that's, as you noted, it's just out there. There's a political component to it that's tiring, and that's not the way I want to look at this topic. If you're okay with it, instead of doing this kind of top-down, abstract look at identity, I kind of want to try a bottom-up approach. And I'll tell you that my reasoning for this, it's because I think a lot of people, especially young people, struggle with identity, intrinsic identity in particular. You probably have more experience observing this than I do, but people struggle with who they are, who they want to be.
Naturally, right? It's like they're becoming, they're evolving. Literally, they are human, not beings, but human becomings.
Oh, that's catchy. That's a good teacher phrase.
I should write a poem.
Yeah, you should write a poem about that. So, but yeah, they struggle with it by necessity, as you say. But maybe this isn't accurate, but it seems like they struggle now maybe more than they have in the past, and perhaps a reason for that is because their potential path is influenced so much more by entertainment, social media, and so on. There are many paths from all over the country and all over the world that they're exposed to, and there's just a lot of noise, and it's hard to determine. It's hard to look inward and figure out what your identity is when you have all of this noise out there.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's a valuable exercise to actually analyze your identity and try to get some self-awareness and self-knowledge. And so my goal with this topic is that I think that you, first off, you're not a teenager anymore, and so you've already kind of found your identity somewhat. Like, your identity is pretty solid at this point.
Yeah, I have a stronger sense of self than I did. Yeah, that's a good
definitely
way to put it.
I don't think anyone's identity is necessarily ever totally hardened, and everyone is always changing.
Yeah, you're right.
But I think that you're a pretty stable person. You're successful. You're happy. Your life is pretty good. You're not in
thank
any.
You, Bennett.
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome. But you're not in any depressive state. You don't have any major crises affecting you. And so, if you'll allow me to make an assumption, I would assume that however you've structured your identity, all the categories you laid out, and how much importance you put on each one, whatever you've done and however you've arranged your identity, it's worked. Or at least it's not been a barrier to you. And so if you're okay with the more personal nature of this, I kind of want to ask you about some of the popular identity categories and just see how important they are to you and how much of your identity is wrapped up in any one of those categories, and try to figure out, how your strategy works for assessing your identity.
This feels big and epic, but I'm ready to try. I feel like once you ask questions, I'll start to understand more. But yeah, I appreciate the compliment. Basically, I'm a good test subject because I'm thoughtful enough. I've had enough success that I have a sense of self. I'll be able to articulate my thoughts on how I arrived and why I'm here and how much value I place on whatever the question may be. So,
right.
Yeah, hit me with it.
And of course, there's the obvious disclaimer that the way you identify, is not going to hold true for everyone. But I think that that maybe the strategy you use for deciding how much you identify with any given category would be useful to anyone listening, because, like I say, the results, the truth is in the pudding. You have a pretty stable, good life, and you don't have identity crises that often. So
not that often.
Must be doing something right. So, all right. So, none of these are too wild, and you already went through a bunch of really, really good ones. But why don't we start with sex? So whether you're male or female, you're a man, obviously. So how much does being a man? How much of your identity is being a man?
Well, these are tough to answer, but certainly.
Oh, and if I can put one more difficult question to you,
okay,
for each of these, if you can try to gut instinct ballpark a percentage of your identity that it makes up.
And they don't 100%. They don't all add up to equal 100, though. Or are you saying yes, they should?
They should.
Oh, okay. Well,
they should. I know I'm giving you a kind of impossible task, and you can always go back and adjust it or whatever, but just ballpark. Maybe it doesn't have to be a number. You can just tell me important.
I'll try.
Kind of important.
I'll try my best. So let me back up and say I would have said less. Look, I am a man, that is a fact, but this is a body I'm contained within, but my thoughts are separate from this body, and I would have said so being a man does not shape my interpretation of things. There's Daniel and then there's the body. But as I've been, I guess in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I don't know exactly when, but I started to realize that I'm deeply physical whether I like it or not. Like my outlook on the world. If you caught me and tried to have a podcast when my alarm goes off in the morning, I would just be like, the world sucks and everything's horrible. And like, then I kind of wake up and my worldview is shifted. But if I haven't had a meal or if I have a headache, and being constrained to that physicality, and like, so I started working out and feeling better and I had more energy, and I'm like, I'm making obvious connections and saying something that seems fairly obvious, but I think if we just realized how deeply physical we are, like that's an important realization. And if that's true, then like my XY chromosomes like are doing something and shaping who I am, and it's inextricable. So I'm going to I don't know what number percentage, especially because I don't know how many categories you're going to give me and stuff, but like it's not nothing. I don't know. I'm actually in the process of figuring that out. I even, some of my upbringing suggested like this is you have some duties that are, in terms of
Yes.
society to how to behave, and I think that's what you're touching on more too, or possibly as well. And like,
Yes.
I feel that sense of duty still, whether that's a little bit as protector to some degree, or I mean, I'm getting into interesting territory, but like I do feel that.
Okay.
And I feel that heightened. We just had a lockdown drill, or an open shooter drill at our school about where to go, what to do, and I just like I channeled some of my identity as a man or as leader of the classroom. I understand that those are different things, and you can be leader of the classroom and obviously be a woman, but like I just was
Sure.
like, listen, if they come in, if in this dark situation in which a shooter comes in, like I'm sacrificing myself, and if I knock the person down, the idea is that you pile on. You don't just sit there like a duck, sitting duck. And so, anyway, like sit there like a duck. Don't be a duck who sits there.
Don't be a duck on a log, as they say.
But my point is that like I think I was on some level channeling some sense of duty that had been intertwined. So like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Can we just move on to another? I've explored that idea now. So yeah, it's into my relationship. I open the door for my girlfriend every time we get in a car, and that's almost just a playful little romantic gesture that I've just not stopped. Right? And so people might say
Right.
it's antiquated, or well, you could say a whole lot of things with criticisms, but that's all nonsense. Like, stop it. We like it. It's adorable. Like, whatever. And like but that's intertwined with being a man, and like to some small degree. And I don't feel ashamed of that. I kind of like it, and so I think it's kind of important.
There we go. Yeah, I'm definitely 100% on board with that, and to me, that sounds like a very healthy relationship with that. It's not the first thing you would choose to identify with necessarily. When I asked you what your identity is, you didn't. That's not the first thing you said. I'm a man. You said other things, but I think it's important to embody the traits of the best traits of your sex, being a protector or being chivalrous, as they would say. Those are good traits. So, all right. So what about age? What about identifying as a young man or whatever? Like, does that play a part in your identity? And obviously that changes over time. So
yeah, I would say I'm still in that. I'm very much in the young professional category, and I get labeled sort of a young, enthusiastic teacher. And so if we're just doing young, because I'm young, well, it's chicken or egg. It's not because I get the label of young or because I know I'm young. That's why I bounce around the classroom. So I should not conflate youth and energy. I think that's a mistake, because I suspect I will be an old man teacher bouncing around the room, and people will be like, oh, he's got all that energy. He's just Daniel the teacher. I almost said my name. You were like, please don't say it. Please don't say it.
I don't want to edit this.
But I like bouncing around the room. I really think I will be. I legitimately do. So that's a different thing than young. I have always been very very conscious of being the youngest teacher in the institutions and the youngest in the meetings. And very recently, it seems like I am now the still in the young category, but I'm the second way. I'm not the first. I'm not the youngest. And so, and the youngest seem significantly less experienced, frankly, like from my work positioning. So that's interesting to me. Of course they're an age. I don't say that as a pejorative or like, it's just they are. So yeah, no, not that much then. My age doesn't mean that much to me.
To your identity. Would you say that I think I'm on board with you. This is a theory that I'm just throwing out there. I think that when you are young, you identify more with your age, and when you're old, you identify more with your age. But when you're in the middle, like when you're between like 26 and 56 or somewhere in that range, your age just kind of doesn't matter as much to your identity.
I have several close friends and colleagues that I hang out with on a regular basis that are closer on that would you say like 56, and I'm closer to the 26. So it's like and it doesn't, when we're hanging out, like there's different life stages that they've been married and had kids and stuff, but like when we're just hanging out and chatting, like we're just hanging out and chatting and making dumb fart jokes. It's like, it's kind of refreshing. It's like, like this is the playfulness that they have. I had a conceptualization of what it would be like to be in your 50s, and I was, as a kid, you think that's like older and fuddy-duddy, and they're not, and so, and I don't think I will be, and it's just kind of refreshing. I'll also say this, it's about like when I'm around my parents, I kind of revert to this. I'm a little whinier or like short-tempered sometimes. I'm just notably more whiny, or just I don't put on airs. If I'm around my parents and my mom says something that annoys me and has always annoyed me, I just am quick to respond negatively, and I love her to death. That's just like, that's me being a bratty teenager again almost. It's like it's the comfort zone. So it's that role. Whereas if I'm walking into a school and I'm the youngest teacher, like there's some deference like that I feel like I have to exercise, or like I am like low person on the totem pole. But generally speaking, I don't think of like my age and my identity being intertwined. I just notice that if I'm young or old in a situation, because I'm the oldest in the classroom as a teacher, obviously, when I'm teaching whatever grade I'm teaching. And so, I step it up as role model and I behave accordingly. So.
Okay. That sounds like a healthy way to do it. I was going to ask if you think young people generally speaking, should identify less with their age, and same for old people. Old people should identify less with their age, or whether it's important to have that. But I think maybe your reasoning for having some deference to your elders or being a role model for people younger than you, that is actually a good reason for some sort of identity to be tied up, or identity to be tied up in age.
But what gets funny to me is like I teach juniors and seniors, and they're mixed in there, and juniors see the seniors as way older, and then seniors see the juniors as way younger, and I don't know who's a junior or a senior in my class, and don't care, right? I mean, I kind of did by this point, but and they're acting weird around each other and kind of nervous, like, oh, it's weird having all these older kids. It's like, what? That's when they shouldn't. That's exactly when they should not care.
Right, exactly. So, like, if I'm asking you to quantify these things, if I was asking one of your juniors to quantify these things, they might say, "Oh, yeah, I'm a man, so we'll give that 5%, and I'm 17 or however old they are as a junior, and so I'll do that. But I'm also a junior, and I would give that 5%. They would give the year in high school they are as 5%, and like to anyone outside of that position, that sounds ludicrously high.
It does, but also I can't be blind to the fact that like it means something as a senior. You're head of the school, so to speak, as your student leaders, and like that comes with the territory. So maybe it is nice to sort of climb this manufactured totem pole of or this hierarchy, and like it's just healthy. And for us, we kind of chuckle as adults, going, I mean, this is 1 year apart, whatever. But like to them, it's this sort of epic journey through all of high school. And now I go, high school's 4 years. Like for some reason, people will be like, there's high school, there's college, and then there's the adult life, as if that's about a third each. That's your life.
Right.
And they're both 4 years. I mean, college can be longer depending on the degree, and But the point is, like, we've done something weird where we've elevated the high school experience to these epic, it's formative years. So, like, one dumb little embarrassing moment can stick with you and give you nightmares for the rest of your life. So there is something like everything's epic and fast and furious and important and dramatic and melodramatic, and it's all like, ah! And I feel for them, and I love that age. That's why I'm a teacher. But it's so funny. It's like, I see kids sometimes that are in different social groups, and I think to myself, they'd be best friends. These two kids, but one's in 10th and one's a senior, and they're in a little bit different social groups, and that would just never happen. They're worlds apart, and it would be hilarious for me to try to force it. But the reality is, if somehow those worlds, if they could see them for how superficial they are, they actually would be, because what I'm recognizing is their sense of humor and their curiosity, and I think they would legitimately, like if I could be matchmaker for friendships in high school, I think I'd be good at it.
Right.
So.
All right, let's move down the list. Sexuality, another common identity category. How much does that play into your identity?
Being straight.
You're gay. Yeah, straight.
Yeah, I'm straight, and so how much? I have to think for a moment, because what is typical, like it's typical to be straight, and I don't think about being straight that often, so what it's kind of like unexamined, like my straightness is largely unexamined in me. I don't know what to like. It's funny. Like I don't what can I say? Where do I go from there? I'm straight. That is the typical, like statistically. Like, it's just like that's. I'm wired a certain way. Like I am. That is true.
That's a fair enough answer. I mean, if it doesn't play into your identity, like if you're summing up who you are, if you don't come up with straight, then that's not playing a large part in your identity.
And it certainly, we tease, like I joke around, like I love candles, and like I dread, like fashion is a big deal to me, aesthetics and like furniture, poetry and furniture, like these things that would be considered feminized and like even more crudely categorized as like, oh, that's gay or something like that, sort of as a meaning to sort of, I'm not sure what it's meaning to do exactly, but I don't see the relationship between like your desire for the same sex and like your affinity for candles. It's always struck me, right? Like I don't get it. I don't get how like being like, even the word flamboyant, right? Flamboyant is almost like a word you ascribe to the mannerisms of a gay person, but like I'm actually reasonably flamboyant, wouldn't you say? Like I don't know.
Definitely.
I bounce around. I'm goofy. I don't know what flamboyant exactly means, I guess. But anyway, I'm straight, and I do not say, ooh, I can't like candles, because that wouldn't be very straight of me. I don't think that way. Yeah, I don't measure it in some straight scale and go, ooh, yeah, I should do that because it fits with my straight narrative. And so the fact that I don't do that at all, like I don't make, like my tastes and things are not at all dictated on that spectrum of how straight it appears. Like it suggests to me it just doesn't play a very significant role.
Yes, that makes sense. And I mean, like, if you had to hypothesize just in terms of your current happiness levels or mental health levels or whatever, like the fact that you don't struggle or analyze over your sexuality in terms of your identity, I mean, that probably plays some small part in or at least it could be a lot worse, right?
Yeah, no, I have certainty in that I'm not in a crisis of like, am I not straight? Like that's not a question I wrestle with. I imagine that would really, like that entails a journey at the very least, quite a journey, and a big part of that journey would be mental health. And also, though, I would say this though, if if I were gay, I do think being all of a sudden that is not what's typical in society statistically, right? Like that's not just it's not 9 out of 10 people aren't gay. So if you are in the minority there, I would notice it and feel it and understand this is outside of what is typical. I'm living in a world that is primarily straight, and here I am, a gay person. And so when that happens, I would become more aware of it, and by being more aware of it, it probably would play into my identity more. And then I'd have to go, well, how much am I going to let this component define me? And versus there's so many other factors that play too. So yeah, I just sympathize there, right? Like being straight in a straight society isn't like, just isn't that interesting to talk about, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas it's more interesting to talk about like talking about a gay person in a straight society, that's interesting. Or talking about a straight person in a gay society, that's interesting. But a gay person in a gay society, not that interesting. And a straight person in a straight society, not interesting.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's hit the other big one. So what about your race? How much does that play into your identity?
I guess I would get into as a white person. I've not a whole lot, or like, you know, I've read a slew. I could list you all the books about white identity, and I don't know if I don't want to go deep down that path, but essentially they were attempts.
But I mean, so. Well, if I could just ask, why did you read those? Did you read those because of your intrinsic questions about identity?
Well, I think society is currently claiming, there's a claim out there that like being white is more a part of your identity than you realize. And that's a pretty provocative claim. Really? Like, because I don't think of myself as white. Or I mean, I am aware on some level I'm white, but it's not part of what I think about as I make my way through the world. And these books are sort of claiming that's precisely our point. That's why you need to know more about what it means to be white. And I'm like, ooh, that's interesting, because if I don't, what are my blind spots? That's something that just drives my curiosity. And so I read I shouldn't say all of the literature. I mean, I'm just talking about 7 or 8 books. But I read. That's a good bit, right? Like I've heard that if you read two books on a subject, you know more than 98% of the population on said topic. So if I've read 7 or 8, I might as well be
You're like the white guy.
I know my whiteness. So I went from so now it's like 97% of my identity.
Right.
Yeah, like it's enthralling, and so I've been sensitive to my whiteness, I suppose, or at least trying to be, but it hasn't held the water. Like I don't feel apologetic or guilty the way like the books suggested. And I know I'm simplifying the stuff, but like I don't feel. I want to know like what is my whiteness, how does that impact others? I'm very curious, especially as a teacher. That's why I felt it was my responsibility to read these books. If I put myself out there, I'm walking into a classroom, what messages have I just sent out just by being a pretty tall guy, pretty thin guy, pretty white guy, pretty pasty, like just like all these things. What messages that like I wouldn't think that gives them much information to work with, but people are interesting. They might form all sorts of opinions immediately. Ooh, he's young, he's gonna be cool. Ooh, he's like, I mean, fill in the blank. I was trying to think of a negative one, but I couldn't come up with a negative. Why would you look at me and come up with a negative one? Oh, he's thin, and I don't like thin teachers. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I could be very cynical, but I won't. Yeah, I mean that's all well and good. I certainly understand what you're saying.
I'm not answering this question well, but I think that is the point too. Is that we're in a hot mess, and I'm almost scared. That should say something. I'm just scared to talk about my whiteness. So yeah, that frankly, it's a terrifying conversation. It's like, oh, this is so ripe for like low hanging fruit, because no matter how you say it, like someone can critique it, right? So, oh, look, he's not acknowledging, or he is acknowledging, or whatever. And so it's just like, I'm scared. I'd rather just not
Yeah.
talk about it, which is a
Totally,
shame.
yeah. It is a shame. I totally understand the fact that you even mentioned that you were white. You shouldn't have even mentioned it. You should have just talked about it more vaguely. I mean, well, the honest thing to do is to mention it,
Yeah.
mention it straight up. But to more to the point of discarding all of the all of the current fervor over race. What you're talking about walking into the classroom and trying to gauge, or at least trying to understand the labels that people will put on you based on your group characteristics, that's a totally different thing. And we could talk about whether that's justified or not justified.
But where do I put it? Yeah.
But where do you put it in terms of identity? And you've answered that mostly. But what I want to know is, before reading these books and after reading these books, did that number, the percentage that race plays into your identity, did that change? Did it go up, down, not change at all? Do you have any sense of whether that was affected?
Into me, my relationship with myself and my identity with my skin color, it has not affected it at all. Understanding where the cultural conversation is, I am now aware that my skin color is sending a message beyond my control, and so I'm a little sensitive to that, a little more sensitive than I was. And so I try to operate knowing, all right, if they think that I'm sending off these messages, they being any and everyone, just people other than me, then I need to work within that context.
Fair enough,
but yeah, no, for me, with myself, none really. So
yeah, that's a different game. Gauging what if other people identify as people who care about race, that's their problem. But in terms of what you view, who is Daniel? That's what I was curious about, is whether that changed any with regards to race.
I don't put much on there. Yeah, no, I don't think so.
That makes sense. All right, so what about religion? Does that play a part in your identity? Oh, and by the way, as well, if that that topic might have made you uncomfortable, feel free to skip any of these. Like I said, this is really personal about you, so it may not be something you want to talk about.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to wrestle with these. It's almost unexpectedly heavy, but I kind of like it. So, religion or like a relationship with God, or are you going to let me kind of wander through that a little bit?
You can wander through it. I mean, just under the lens of identity, how much does either of those things make up who you are, or intrinsically how you view your identity?
I will say, there's interwoven familial layers of what being raised as a Christian, and I am a Christian, and I am a prayerful person, and I have a relationship with God. But religion as this institution where I go to church. I don't go to church. I really just don't. I'm not against it. I don't feel particularly impassioned to I like the structure it provides. I think about one day starting a family and providing and loving the idea of taking a kid to church, and the sort of it's a moral institution, and what are those morals, and how do you and it's a body of people coming together to worship. So that's a really cool idea, to sort of humble yourself as a group and say there's a greater being and all of that. So yeah, I gosh, that's a tough one too that I'm wrestling with. I like the idea. I could grow in that area. It's not on my front burner issue. Better find myself a church, and I will continue praying. It's actually one of my more private things. I don't, you and I talk all the time, but I don't go, man, I had a hell of a prayer last night, gotta tell you all about it. It's between me and God kind of thing. And so
yeah.
In that respect, because you're asking me who am I and my identity, it actually is this reasonably significant, but it doesn't play into sort of my public, it doesn't enter into my teaching a whole lot, or even in my conversations, I don't, because my prayer is it's not oh yeah, we're talking about this and I was just praying about that the other night. I don't fold it in that way. I almost intentionally if my prayer is sort of a a holy experience, if that is, then like that's my thing with God. Like I don't like it's my private thing, and so I'm pretty private about it, and so yeah, it's pretty, and that's pretty significant to me, and it like gives me a sense of purpose and stability, and like when I'm having a tough time, like it's like I feel like there's a mental health component of God like interwoven into my mental health deeply. So yeah, I'd say it's pretty important.
Would you say of the ones that we've gone through so far, would you say it's the most, it's the greatest percentage of your identity of the ones?
Can you go over them really quickly? Just list them again. Like being a man, sex,
sex, age, sexuality, race, and religion.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, interesting. Well, you're confirming. I mean, maybe it's just because we've been friends for a long time and we share a lot of the same outlooks. But like,
I haven't shocked you with my.
Yeah. No. Well, I didn't expect to be shocked. I mean, I think that I know you pretty well, but you're proving my hypothesis anyway, in my opinion, that the way that you assess your identity and the importance you put in each of these categories probably plays some role in your mental health and your success in life and so on. So we've hit all the big ones. We've hit the major ones. Everyone talks about these. These are the ones that are all over the place. But like, your identity can be broken down almost infinitely. So, what about your hair color? How much of your identity is made up by your hair color? Would you say
probably zero? Probably zero.
Probably none. Okay.
Having hair.
What about?
I would say is some small percentage, not a lot, but like hair color, like if it were red or black or brown or whatever. Like I don't know. If I were bald, I feel like it would impact my self-image a little bit. So,
do you think that? Do you think there's anything wrong with putting making hair color part of your identity? Like maybe if you are a ginger or like a blonde or something. There are there are things people categorize.
Yeah, no, I get
getting really tripped up on my words, but you see what I'm saying, right? People do invest some of their identity into their hair color.
Right.
Strangely, to me, but
it feels strange. Except I just have to go instead of hair. I mean, what they're doing is some sense of their attractiveness. Like they feel like it's their thing that makes them attractive. That's what I suspect, anyway. Like some people get into their makeup. Well, I shouldn't say, because that could have a whole art to it, right? Like you're now doing a hobby, and so you can put your identity in the hobby, but also weirdly with makeup, it's not just a hobby, it's also like improving your looks, and I'm putting that in quotes because depending on but
right, sure. Well, also makeup is a product that you buy and put on, and your hair just grows out of you.
Yes.
Obviously you can dye it, but.
But if I were to say attractiveness is part of my identity holistically. So if you're going to say like, and actually that might measure my height, like all these little things give an impression of how attractive I am, and I believe that the world responds to attractiveness pretty strongly. So I've been shaped by my attractiveness. I will admit, like probably pretty, and that might even fold in skin color, right? And so at least to some degree, my the way I'm being perceived is gonna like people will respond positively or negatively depending on if they find me attractive.
That's an interesting point. I didn't write that down, but you definitely can identify as ugly or as attractive or as average, and that certainly affects your mental state and your outcomes. So that's a really good point.
And the narrative we tell ourselves, because it's pretty subjective,
right.
And how you carry yourself and all of that. It's really, but that might be a more of a product of your, I don't know. Anyway,
could be. It's probably there's some cycle to it, and I mean the fact that you identify as an attractive person, it. In whatever quantity or that you choose, that probably does play a part. Like I imagine that if you're stuck identifying as someone ugly, you're going to have a harder time.
Yeah, and I think that there. Let's say it's no secret there are ugly people in the world, and they probably know it. So they also not only are you ugly, but you identify as ugly. Like it would be better if you.
That's the problem.
But that's actually harmony, and that sucks because the right thing to do is to know it. But wouldn't it be better if you're kind of ugly just to identify as reasonably good looking. Like,
Well, I mean, so I think that, like you say, the sad reality is that there are ugly people, but and it's almost inescapable. I mean, you can try to mitigate it with like a paper bag or something, but you sorry,
I mean,
that's
I was actually just thinking, well, with weight control, pretty much takes care of a lot of it, but that's not accurate either. That's just bad. Anyway.
yeah. Sorry, I was being mean as well, but the legitimate the real thing is that while you may not be able to affect that part of reality, you can, in terms of identity, you can control these proportions, how much you identify in any of these given categories. And so if you happen to be dealt a hand where you're uglier than others, then at least in terms of your own psychology, I would think that the strategy would be to identify less as an ugly person and focus more on other categories, which I think is a strategy that people implement all the time.
So you're saying don't deny the ugliness, just place your emphasis elsewhere. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I'm saying anything groundbreaking here, but I think that, I mean, obviously it's a psychological trap that people can get stuck in, identifying as some sort of victim, whether it's of, their inferior beauty or as a particular race or age or whatever. You can get trapped over identifying in any of these categories.
That's a really good point, because it would be a mistake to tell the ugly person, you're so beautiful. Like the reality is, if they just would feel like they're lying to themselves, they start going, I'm beautiful, I am beautiful. Like, that's not it's like, stop getting caught up in the looks department. Let's place, like, what do you have control over and what can you do? Like, let's de-emphasize. Let's not get so hung up on the looks. I mean, to some degree anyway. Like, I just, it's not like saying, oh, you're ugly, so just focus on being funny or something. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, like, you're getting really caught up in this negative cycle. And so stop the negative cycle and go focus on something positive if you can. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. So what about nationality? What about being American? Does that play a part in your identity?
Sure, a little bit, I guess. It probably, I mean, again, that shaped me in untold ways. Like, so you're asking, like, explicitly, I don't think go around going, hi, I'm Daniel, American.
I'm an American.
I'm an American. I'm Daniel. I'm American. Nice to meet you.
I'm an American white man.
Hi, I'm an American white man. But I also understand that, like, the education system I was brought up in the South, and how I don't have a good sense of geography or a huge global perspective or whatever. I don't, and so that is almost stereotypically American. And so I got to go, all right, I acknowledge that I fit some of the stereotypes of American.
I think you're way worse than the average American at geography.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. But my lack of interest in improving is very, very American, right?
You almost identify as a person who doesn't know geography.
Yeah, I do. Probably more than an American, so... So yeah, I don't know. So yeah, that's there. I used to not identify as a Southerner. This will round out this discussion, is that I didn't think of myself as Southern at all. And now that I've gotten away from Southern culture for a while, and people like would ascribe, oh, you're from there. Okay, it would really annoy me if they wanted to suggest that they knew something about me because of where I was from, because a lot of it just doesn't fit. And I still think that's a bad idea. But it's just like reflecting on your childhood. You're like, oh yeah, of course I was informed by a lot of Southern values and thoughts and things. Like, of course I was. And there's no shame in that, but I just recognized it was interwoven into me in a way that I was very, very blind to. So that's what I was interested in reading those books, by the way, too. Is like, all right, well, is my whiteness interwoven in a way that I'm blind to? Like, I'm not, it's like, I don't know, and I don't think so to the degree of which I'm being told it is, but I'm willing to examine that, because, like, yeah, I think being an American probably has a lot more of shaping in mind that I'm currently aware. But yeah, I don't walk around with this sort of explicit sense of being an American, like being part of who I am and informing my opinions and like, yeah, America. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. Obviously, being born in America has created circumstances that made you become the person you are. But in terms of your identity, exactly like you say, you don't think about that. That doesn't enter into your equation.
but that's
when
the
you're
real
quantifying
question.
who you
How
are.
much of it is my explicit identity interwoven into who I think about who I am, or like is it the actual influences? Like those are different things because I can't know how freaking American I am. Like I
Well,
can't exactly. So
yeah, but
all
that's
my
that's.
friends are
I mean, it's a
Americans. I swim in it. You know.
yeah. Okay, that's fair enough. But in a way, your identity is self-constructed, and I mean, you kind of get to determine where you place the emphasis on all of these
Yeah,
categories.
I'm not emphasizing my Americanism. Like I have never bought an American like pair of shorts, or I've never like hung an American
Yeah,
flag in my anywhere. Yeah, just like I don't choose to emphasize it. That's a better way. How much
right.
emphasis do I put on it? There you go. That just helps solve some
Yeah,
of these problems for me. It clarifies. I'm
right,
just gonna say
right, right.
where do I put my emphasis? Not very high at all. So low.
So, what about your family name?
Woo. Uh, Pretty high, even though I don't have an extended family. I guess it's just like super high respect for my parents. Um, I have like, yeah. Uh, so, and I like the idea of, but I also don't care about, all right. I'm at an age where I'm just now even having an inkling to go like, what are my roots? I've never been interested in that question. Probably aggressively uninterested. And I'm still, to be honest, not interested in it. But I feel a little guilty by not being a little more interested. Like, where do my ancestors come from? And so, if I, if I'm just being honest, I am not quite where I'm curious. I suspect one day that I will grow more curious, but I'm not there yet. And
Mm-hmm.
so my family name is my like I want to honor my parents, and I want a lineage, like I want a little, you know, son or daughter that's like carrying on that name proudly. I like that. So yeah. It
Interesting.
means something to me, but I think my initial was just out of respect to my parents to go a lot, but really it's not a whole lot. Not
Okay.
actually. I mean, if you take it out of like paying respect to my parents, it's very little. But I just really respect my parents, and it seems to mean something to them, and so I'm gonna just like by osmosis care a little bit for them.
So maybe I should say that. Well, I have another category later for interpersonal relationships. So being a boyfriend or a son or a friend or whatever, your being a son plays heavily into your identity.
Yes,
Maybe
that's
more
what
so than family
family
name.
name. Then okay, that helps clear it up. Then in that case, family name means very little to me.
Yeah. So let's. I've got a handful more, but I think they get easier and easier.
Okay.
So you already mentioned being from the South. I had put state of birth and state of residence. You kind of already answered that, but does the state of birth and residence, is there any difference between those two to
I'd
you?
say a lot. Yeah, I was born and raised for 21 years in the same state, and like yeah, that means something. I will always be that state, like that person from that state. I actually
Yeah.
identify and also the question is where you're from. It's never where you live in because I think that's obvious. But I have no relationship with where I live right now. Like I don't. It's just it will be a place I lived, you know. And if someone asks, I
Interesting.
will feel like I lay some claim if like I move out of this state, and people start talking about this state. I'll go, oh yeah. I mean, I spent some real time there. Like I feel like I can weigh in on the
Hmm.
culture. I don't feel my identity though. Nah, my identity is zero. But my like I can lay claim in a conversation. Oh yeah, I know all about that state. You know, yeah.
So what about a consumer of a specific brand or item? So do you identify as a Toyota guy or an Apple guy or a typewriter guy? Or anything like that.
I mean,
so
you joke. My friends joke. I'm a sort of a product guy in terms of I like to do some research, buy some technical stuff like fabrics and things, and I'm like a fashion guy, and so that becomes by extension like Cole Haan shoes, or there's all sorts of brands I could go into with shirts and stuff. So a brand suggests credibility. So, but this is weird. Like, yeah, I really enjoy it, and like I even like people will come to me and ask, I want some shoes. I want a good pair of dress pants, and I like that. So if that's what you're asking, do I like that they see me as that? I do. I like it. So it's not insignificant.
Well, that's different. So I would say that's your value on attractiveness or presentation or whatever.
Probably so.
But in terms of specific brands, like
no, I will buy
people are loyal to their car brand, or to like I play PlayStation.
That's very low.
I like Marvel or whatever the case may be.
I give the brand what it deserves. If it's a great shirt, then yeah, I'll buy one. But like, there's so many good shirts on the market. I'm like experimenting, so I didn't find one good shirt brand and stick to it, because there's just too many good ones out there right now. And it's the same like with a car. It's not like, yeah, I've had Toyotas and they're just known for being a good car, but that's why I want them, is because they're known for being good. But like, if Mazda, if I was in the market and like that hit my needs, I would get that. So yeah, not really brand loyalist. But brands that signify quality, are like, that's useful, So I like to, it means when I'm going out to search for things, I will exclude a lot of just low brands, and just like, I'm looking for this tier of brand, and people seem to know what that means. But yeah, no, I'm not married to a brand whatsoever. So no.
All right, so the last ones are ones that I think are going to be pretty big. So occupation, hobbies, any particular hobby, personality, and interpersonal relationships.
Personality.
So how much? Yeah, personality. So how much you identify as, say, an extrovert or whatever the components of your personality are.
A
funny man.
No, okay, so start occupation, teacher, the lion's share probably of whatever. Like, maybe it's just too much and I need to back off on that a little. I think that's actually, if I'm going for self-improvement, then I need to and I've actually been doing that a little in my life. It's trying to whittle that down. Like, it's occupied too much of my identity.
Your occupation is occupied too much.
Yeah, no, but it's true.
Well, the robots will help you out with that soon enough.
They'll help out. And as I'm getting older and more sure of myself, I don't have the need that teaching can fulfill, right? Like student praise or praise from your coworkers or administration or whatever. So like, I've gotten that. I know I'm decent anyway. So I'm trying to work on like the whole self instead of just me, the teacher. And I've been doing that too much.
It sounds like almost naturally teaching has become less a part of your identity because you're more confident in it.
Yes.
Is that
that's
accurate
an interesting thing to say, but yes. Yeah. Right. And so, yeah. But it's still probably too high. And maybe the highest thing on all of this. Well, yeah.
Right. I mean, I suspected that probably would be the case. But I think that's the case for many people, that their job is probably their highest identity category.
That's weird to say. That doesn't mean it's more important than being a son. Like, if given, like, oh, you go to work or go help your family, like, I'm going to go help my family.
Well,
but,
Well, yeah, obviously, it doesn't necessarily say anything about your value structure. Not necessarily, but think about it. Every man who is born is a son. So, in a way, you're in the same way that you're white, you're just kind of stuck with it. You are what you are, but you aren't necessarily a teacher. You choose that, you work towards it, and you continue to work in that area every day.
Yeah.
And so, almost by nature, that will be a larger part of your identity.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. You can imagine situations where maybe being a son is more important than, or more a bigger component of your identity than being a teacher. Maybe in a certain circumstance where, your parents are ill and you have to take care of them, or something like that, that role might fill more of your identity for a while.
Yeah. What were the others? Hobbies?
So, hobbies and interpersonal relationships.
I'm weird. I don't have many hobbies. I mean, I read, I watch movies, and I work out, and I do things, and I like to go on vacation, but I always get struck with it's like, well, what do you do in your free time? And it's like, hang out, have fun, hang out with friends. I have these like stupid answers. And it's
laugh,
it's actually
live, laugh, love.
It's another area of my life where I could be a little more deliberate, intentional, and say, I like writing. I want to write. I should write more. I should become a writer as a hobby. But so I'm not very good at that right now. I'm just like, I'm tired from work. I put all of my identity into the work. So then I'm like, I get home and I just want to watch some Netflix and some Great British Baking Show and zone out. You know what I mean? And so I need to. And or be a good boyfriend, or do my workout and try and take care of my body and stuff like that. So it's just like, who has time for hobbies? Which is by the time I've relaxed a little and worked out and done all my work and prepped for work, like that's my life. And that's actually, and then maybe gone on the occasional trip or something, or done this podcast. How about that? This is my hobby. This is actually my hobby. Yeah, there you go. Right. This is my most disciplined hobby. That and watching B movies with you. So you occupy 100% of my hobby life.
Most of your hobbies. Jeez.
and it's worthless. 0% of my identity. No.
Well, we also rarely get to watch B movies. Yeah, no. So that gives some more perspective.
Well, and I don't consider watching TV a hobby. We could debate about what's a hobby. That's a whole conversation for another time, though. Because As a brief aside on the topic of writing, I would actually really like to read some writing of yours. Like if you wrote, I don't know, any variety of stuff, some creative thing or essay or something. I think that's kind of an untapped skill that you could have. Obviously, you're an English teacher. You're familiar with the art of writing and lots of examples of writing. But to my knowledge, you haven't really done a lot of writing. I don't know. I'd be interested to see what you could. Yeah, I could certainly write more, and outside the realm of poetry too. I would like to know too if I just started writing. Yeah, I'd like to do that. And would you ever, side note, would you ever take a writing course? There's this writing, that'll do little challenges and journals every day, and you pay $30 and you have a month-long writing course. I know of some things like this that do this sort of write yourself alive, and it I don't know. Next time it happens, it's a different discussion. You just wouldn't be interested.
I mean, yeah.
It would just be us doing it together. Just be someone you do it, I do it.
Yeah, that sounds. If it was.
It's a group of us that's something. You don't have homework things, and no one really checks in or anything. It's just here's your daily prompt, and you sort of make this commitment to yourself. And then they have a Facebook page that you can go share your writing if you want, and get people to, optionally give feedback and stuff. So
I guess that doesn't sound so bad. I write a lot anyway.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, but it's fun to write with external prompts. When someone I never would have thought I would say this, as a student or whatever. I hated writing. I hated it. I hated being told what to write. And whenever they would tell me to write something, I would write something else. When I was in science class and we had to write an essay, and the only rule was you have to use these vocabulary words. I wrote a ridiculous narrative that just happened to use the vocabulary words. It was a story about a spy. Yeah.
You went way over the top with the assignment, and people liked it a lot.
Yeah, it was really funny. But now I like the idea of being told, write this, and then being able to write creatively within those bounds. The bounds, the more that I learn more and more that having limitation is what allows you to be creative, which is kind of a paradox.
Freeing. But it is a paradox.
Because without any limitation, you have no direction, and you don't know where to go. But if you have some limitation, you know where the boundaries are, and you can fill those boundaries as creatively as you can. So.
Yep.
kind of an aside. We're going on kind of long. I'm running out of steam.
And I'm also, I am too, to be honest.
I detect that you are as well. And we've made it through all of the categories. I just want to kind of put a bow on this topic of identity, because you've gone through and you've explained how you kind of place importance on all of these categories. And, again, this is just my opinion and my assessment, but I think that like your how you divvy up the importance of all of these various aspects is probably pretty healthy and pretty reasonable. And, a lot of people struggle whether rightfully or not with how to divvy up the components of their identity. And like we said, especially young people. So I don't know if your walking through these might serve as an example or at least a template for self-analysis, but I think it could be really helpful to do that.
Well, I appreciate
one other
that.
point,
and like I don't know that I'm a model for that, but like you said, like I'm willing to be vulnerable, and like I'm pretty stable.
I wouldn't.
So.
Yeah, I'm not even claiming that you're the pinnacle of identity perfection. That's not what I'm doing. But I do. But I mean, obviously, you've got things going pretty well for you, and like, I don't think you have any pathological identity problems, and a lot of people do. And there's a lot of noise out there right now telling people that they should. People are making claims saying you should value this part of your identity really highly, and sometimes I think that can be misleading and actually damaging. And so, maybe it's good for people to hear that it's okay to just kind of not care that much about some of these big pieces, these big chunks of identity that people tell us we should care a lot about. Maybe we shouldn't really,
Yeah.
And another point I was going to make, too, is that, I listed a handful of categories, 10 categories or something like that. But I could have listed 100. And if I really grilled you and made you put a percentage on these things, the number of categories, as you pointed out, affects the number you assign. I could have picked 100 categories, and you would have had a really hard time coming up with a percentage number to put on these things. I could have come up with 1,000 categories, and it would have been even harder. In fact, just the categories I listed, if I were to try to identify you, the number of combinations I could have made from all of these categories is 27 million billion combinations.
Just out of those.
So just out of the ones that I listed. And so you picking one from each category, actually, it makes you super unique. There's like 27 million billion combinations, and you picked one of them. And it just goes to show that if you focus too heavily on identity on any one of these categories, then you're doing yourself a disservice. So, I mean, the really cheesy endpoint is that if you hyper-focus on identity, you end up at the level of the individual. And so the moral of the story is just be yourself.
Yeah.
Just be yourself.
This reminds me of a good quote. Shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you land amongst the stars.
Beautiful. Yeah. But that's I think that is the real saying.
You do you.
Oh no.
And that's what we're gonna end. We're ending there.
God, that was the message. That was really
the message. You do you.
Freaking you. God, I feel like this has been a joke played on me.
You do you. Do you.
You.